Give it a minute. So, hi everybody. Welcome to the Nepean Capital Leadership Series. Today we have Pratik Pota, CEO of Eureka Forbes. Before I introduce him, I would urge everyone to please mute your audio so that there's no disturbance during the conversation, the fireside chat. And more importantly, once we're done with the fireside chat, we will open it up for Q&A. So please raise your hand, or you could post your question on the comment chat. So with that, I'd like to introduce Pratik. Pratik is the CEO and Managing Director of Eureka Forbes, one of India's leading consumer durables company with products such as AquaGuard, which is India's largest and the number one water purifier, India's number one vacuum cleaner as well. So Pratik's had a career spanning more than 3 decades, having worked for some of India's biggest consumer companies, including Hindustan Lever, PepsiCo, and Bharti Airtel. But more importantly, right before he joined Eureka Forbes in 2022, his last role was the CEO of India's biggest pizza company, i.e. Jubilant FoodWorks. As you know, that's the master franchisee in India for Domino's Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, and now Popeye. That's for the whole of South Asia. So Pratik led the entire turnaround of the business. And in fact, as I was doing homework on this, didn't realize that the tenure at the time that Pratik was there, the stock actually went up 5x. So he implemented a brand new strategy for growth at Jubilant FoodWorks. It drove the digital transformation, which, as we all know, is increasingly becoming an important element of the QSR business, and launched new cuisines and also entered international markets such as Turkey, Russia, and Bangladesh. The top line during his tenure surged, EBITDA margins doubled, leading to the market cap, of course, going up tenfold over the longer period. But today we're here to talk about Eureka Forbes, and I would like to kick it off, Pratik, with a quick round of questions from my side. So, you've had an amazing career spanning 3 decades, as I discussed, with some of India's leading consumer companies. What would you say would be the key learnings across the 3 decades and across all of the companies that you worked for before you joined Eureka Forbes?
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you for the introduction. And it's good to be here on the leadership series. You're absolutely right. In my career, I've had the privilege, if you will, of working with many, many strong companies, starting off with Hindustan Lever, or HLL as it was called then, of course. And I think, look, HLL is in many ways a finishing school for MBAs. And, it rounds off what you've learned in the classroom. You have the opportunity of working with some really illustrious and tall leaders. My first managers at HLL was Nitin. So people of that profile, and that quality, people you work with every single day and you rub shoulders with. You learn the importance of focusing on the consumer, the importance of really doubling down on basics, looking at data. So Levers was a terrific start. And as I look back, I just sort of, count myself very lucky to have had a start at Levers. If Levers was process-driven and methodical, Airtel was all about the need for speed. And in those early days of the telecom years, it was most like the gold rush and trying to do some land grab. And it was in the days when incoming calls were still charged. So it was all about making sure we moved very, very quickly, and often with incomplete data, but just making sure that we were first to market. So I mean, just to sort of illustrate, at Levers, you would spend 6, 7, 8 months turning on an advertising campaign, a lot of consumer work. In Airtel, it was like maybe 6 hours, or maybe if you had a TV campaign, maybe a week. So it was really fast, and it took me out of my comfort zone. And I had to learn to be a lot more agile, a lot more comfortable with ambiguity, and working to sort of respond very, very quickly to the market needs. I think PepsiCo thereafter was I spent 10 years there across multiple roles, marketing, business, etc. I think one of the things I learned from PepsiCo or learned at PepsiCo was about the art of amplifying ideas. If you think about the category that PepsiCo largely operates in, it's all about smoke and mirrors. It's about taking a marketing or a brand idea and really magnifying it, blowing it up.
Sure.
And making sure that your entire ecosystem is aligned to that. So it was instructive in that sense. How do you take something that is the germ of the idea and really, really blow it up? So yeah, I mean, it's been different learnings across different companies. And I must say that one common feature has been that I've had fun at all.
Of course. No, absolutely. But I think more importantly, a lot of us here would like to also learn from you about your experience at Jubilant, which has been really a hallmark of your career, at least the way we see it from the outside. And the fact is, it's just become such a dominant brand, overtaking not just Pizza Hut, but also other regional brands, some of them who are trying to catch up. But the fact is, it just remains the dominant player by far.
No, you're right, Gautam. And when I joined Jubilant, it was a company that was struggling for growth. Margins had been, compressing. We were down to, single-digit margins. We were losing market share. And it was at a time when we were just about to be almost, for want of a better word, assaulted by the emerging food tech players, people like Zomato and Swiggy.
Yeah.
And we were possibly not entirely prepared for that coming transformation and coming headwind. So if I look back at the themes that I drove at Jubilant, which I believe worked for us, I think the first theme was about solving a customer problem. And back then, the recurring feedback that we used to hear was that with lots of pizza players emerging, lots of boutique, small brands, the Domino's pizza quality was seen to have regressed, was not seen to be good enough. So really solving for the quality problem at a time when we had very, very small, compressed and low and declining margins, we invested almost, if I remember correctly, 250, 300 basis points in just taking on incremental food costs to improve product quality.
Yeah.
Solving for the product quality problem, value for money. We're a very value-conscious country in a market, QSR market, where you're looking to the aspirers and the strivers. You need to be at a very, very, very sweet spot in value for money terms. We had been taking pricing year after year, and combined with quality being a little bit of a question mark, I think it was a clear headwind for us. So we launched, something called the Everyday Value, which was offering, products at 199 and then 99 rupees. And we didn't take pricing for almost 4 or 5 years. And when I left in 2022, a pizza was actually cheaper for the larger part across the portfolio than what it had been in 2017.
Wow.
So really held pricing and offered value for money.
Sure.
And that drove, both of them actually drove the needle of growth almost instantly.
Sure.
But that was one. The other piece, if I look back, also was about in a business like QSR, execution and the last mile experience was super critical. And Domino's, obviously, as we know, was built on the promise of 30 minutes delivery.
Yeah.
This was in the days pre-GPS, pre-smartphones, etc. When we did we introduced the rider tracking, all those features, we realized that our on-time delivery was actually quite poor. So we went from almost, I think, 45% of on-time delivery within 30 minutes to 90% in those 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And then we moved, to TCBs, the promise of 20 minutes delivery.
Yeah.
And in many metros, we were having a large number of orders then delivered in 20 minutes. So that was the second theme, execution rigor. The third piece was around just future-proofing the business. I mean, we talked about digital. We didn't have a native app then. And of course, the food tech players were right on the corner. So we built a digital team, we got the app going, and we managed to sort of ride the digital tiger, if you will, and not get consumed. And, that was a big breakout. The fact that we had to invest in technology and making sure that we were capable from a digital point of view, invested in product, in UI UX, in engineering, then in a data science team. So those were new age capabilities for a QSR. Then it was unheard of capabilities.
Yeah.
And then of course to fund for all of those, we had to really double down on efficiencies and on cost control.
Yeah.
And one big theme within that was governance. And look, in a large retail business like a QSR, there will always be points of porosity and points of leakage. So how do you put in place control measures, stronger governance, stronger tools, more digital technology, et cetera, to extract efficiencies? And one reason why we could hold prices and keep passing on values, because we kept extracting costs out.
Sure.
And bad costs out and inefficiencies out, and that really funded for all of it. And of course, then the point you made towards the end, which is that then we acquired the courage, then go into more cuisines, more countries.
Yeah.
I think the one last thing I want to call out for me, it was, I think for all of us, it was a new world when the pandemic struck us, and we didn't really have, we didn't know what to expect. But if I look back now and reflect on what we maybe did well and did better, I think we anticipated what was going to come a little bit more than maybe the others. And I remember, we had moved to zero contact delivery a month before the lockdown happened. We had done full page ads across the country a month before the lockdown happened.
Yeah.
And we had been tracking what was happening in China. So we had taken the SOPs from China, we had looked at the learnings from there, and we had trained our rider workforce, and we had become ready. So when the lockdown happened and when the Janta curfew happened, etc., able to pivot on a dime almost instantly, and that helped us, avoid disruption, and we got the entire network back. But yeah, I mean, I could go on, but those are some of the things that I think if I look back were the big learnings across from Jubilant.
But it's interesting to bring up the fact that you went from 30 minutes to 20 minutes of delivery. I was at a conference this afternoon where they had the co-founder of Zepto. And I said, the fact is, why are people increasingly becoming impatient? I can understand they're impatient for a pizza if they're hungry. They want to get the food fast. But he said, no, the younger generation prefers to book something on an app versus walking down to the Kirana store and buying the product, whether it's soap or shampoo or toothpaste. And, people are more trigger happy with using a mobile app versus, going to a physical store. So as a result of which, quick commerce has exploded. And I think the timing of 10 to 20 minutes is becoming critical to satisfy that immediate urge to buy that product. So I guess in a pizza, it's even more so, because the fact is, if you're hungry, you want it as fast as possible.
Exactly. And we always say that time is the enemy of food. I mean, you have a hot pizza now versus a hot pizza 10 minutes from now versus 30 versus 40 minutes from now. The graph deteriorates very, very rapidly. So it decays much exponentially. So you have to be sure that you're in the sweet spot of delivery timing. But yeah, quick commerce has been almost an eye opener to see what are the use cases for fast delivery.
Exactly. So, what's interesting is if we now move on to Eureka Forbes, you inherited a company with the #1 market share in water filters, but the lowest EBITDA margins, which was, sort of a unique situation to be in. So what are the, you've obviously gone from, if I remember right, 4 to 4.5% of EBITDA margins to now over 11, which is remarkable. But what were the key challenges, issues that you faced when you first arrived?
I think the context of Eureka Forbes was that, like you said rightly, a very strong legacy, storied business, 40 years old, with a tremendous brand like AquaGuard.
Yeah.
With tremendous foundational assets, the fact that we have a strong direct sales network, the fact that we have a very large service network, the fact that we were pioneers and we created 2 categories. Those are very strong and big strengths to have. But equally, notwithstanding those strengths, this company had not grown for more than a decade. It had, like you said, low single-digit margins, lack of growth. When you have lack of growth, it leads to your growth muscles atrophying. It leads to lack of ambition. So when I walked in, I saw a culture that was satiated. Strangely, for a business, and ironically, a business that had not grown,
Yeah.
it was a very complacent culture. It was a satiated culture. It was an insular culture,
Oh,
and marked by a conspicuous lack of ambition. Like I said, people were very comfortable.
yeah.
That was one problem statement. Uh, the other part of it was the fact that the company had not invested for many years in upgrading capabilities.
Mm.
So people had been working in a particular way with a particular set of tools, and that hadn't been upgraded. And we were clearly we had fallen behind, and we hadn't even realized that we had fallen behind.
Yeah.
And the third theme again was the fact that there was a very visible lack of customer focus. We were navigating by what we thought were internal priorities and internal constraints very often, but the customer was nowhere in a line of sight. So as a result, what had happened was, apart from the fact that we had not seen growth, we had not been responding to competition, we had a marked lack of innovation.
Yeah.
So it was a company that was almost caught in a time warp. So
Oh,
I would say that would be that was the problem statement fundamentally, and therefore the task for us was to really shake up the organization, shake up the status of the sense of being okay, and driving aspiration, driving ambition, driving a sense of can do. But more of that later.
did you have to make some tough choices and decisions with respect to managerial changes? You know, letting go some people that you thought were not necessarily open to change?
Uh, yes, Gautam. Though I must say, when I came in,
Yeah.
I came in with the premise that this was possibly a management team that had not been fully resourced, given the constraints of capital, etc., of the prior management,
Yeah.
the prior ownership. So I presume that with the right inputs and the right guidance and the right ambition, we will be able to turn around and deliver. So I went in with that positive intent, but I didn't give myself or my team a very long rope, to be honest.
Sure.
I think it was clear to me in the first few months, about maybe 7 months, that changes needed to be made fairly quickly, and therefore I think we moved very swiftly thereafter in putting in place a reasonably new management team. And just to illustrate what I mean, 80% of the top 2 levels in Eureka Forbes are all new, and
Wow.
they were hired within a year after I joined,
Okay.
and they have been with us since then. And the profile that we chose, Gautam, was we looked for a particular profile of leaders whom we onboarded, leaders who had worked in companies like Asian Paints, or like a Unilever, or like a Procter and Gamble, strong basics wala companies.
Yeah.
But then who had gone on to work thereafter at more new age companies, more digital companies, startups, e-commerce companies, and so on, where they
Oh,
had learned what it required, what you needed to do to be agile, to be very experimentative, customer focused, almost fearless, if you will, in your mindset. So that
sure.
was a very potent combination we were looking for, and we've onboarded that kind of talent, and I think that's been working for us. So yes, I
So
mean, we had to take some tough calls, absolutely.
80%, I think, is obviously quite remarkable. And I think the fact is, if you want to drive up your margins, I mean, and also of course revenue before that, but if the margins have gone up about 2.5x, that clearly tells you obviously made some very tough decisions. Now, we discussed earlier on about your experience dealing with whether it was a Hindustan Lever or a Bharti Airtel or PepsiCo or Jubilant. What of those learnings did you end up employing, or are still employing at Eureka Forbes? And that's obviously part of your turnaround mission.
Yeah, no, so Gautam, of course, the learnings that one imbibes across the experiences that we have, they stay with us, and they prove to be invaluable, at different points of time in different contexts.
Sure.
But if I had to draw a couple of threads from my earlier experiences, the first one we just spoke about, I think when I look back at my earlier stints and what I've done differently here at Eureka, learning from there, was I think the speed at which I moved to change talent and leadership.
Sure.
I felt it was important for me to move much faster than what I had done earlier. And I think that's the one learning that that I brought to bear here. And we moved very, very quickly to get the top leadership changed and profiled right.
Yeah.
That was one. The other piece, I think, is very important. If you think about it, you get leaders of the profile that we've got, and Eureka Forbes isn't the natural destination for top talent. It is not. It's not been. It's hard to. So you have to provide these leaders and these people with a vision, with a sense of purpose that's exciting, that's inspiring, that gets them to come in every morning to work,
Yeah.
the spring in the stride. So I think it's very, very important to co-create a vision that is a quantum jump of where the organization is. And I think make everyone work towards that very, very exciting and almost inspiring goal. So it was very important for us to A, change the talent, and
Yeah.
B, put in place a vision that's, and look, in Eureka Forbes, given our history, given our legacy, I think it's A, reasonable, B, credible for us to do that. That to create a vision that almost goes back and sort of reminds us of the past that we had, but reimagines, and I like using the word a lot for Eureka Forbes because we are doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Reimagines the future and an organization that's completely divorced from the current constraints.
Sure. One of the themes at Nepean Capital that we've employed, and it's worked very well, is finding companies where there's a change in ownership. And increasingly, we've seen over the past at least 6 to 7 years, where global private equity funds like Advent, in your case, in the case of Eureka Forbes, or it's any of the other major global private equity funds, are increasingly coming and buying out companies, but keeping the companies listed. So, I'm glad we're having this conversation. We're happy shareholders, but the fact that you're listed, we're able to buy your stock. And I'm sure some of the people on this call may have the same view. But I guess the point is that I think having a global private equity fund as now the promoter of your company, I think gives a lot of comfort and confidence to outside investors like ourselves that the global PE fund will come in, make the necessary changes, bring in the right talent, case in point being you, who in turn will then obviously work towards turning the ship around. Do you think the fact that your promoter is Advent or in a global private equity fund, has that been useful in attracting talent, or it hasn't worked?
No, Gautam, undoubtedly it's been a huge asset. And it has helped us draw and attract top talent to Eureka Forbes. What it also does is it allows us to tap into a very, very large global and local repository of talent, of insights, of wisdom.
Yeah.
So we tap into the operating partner network of Advent. We were able to attract, and we've got an outstanding board of directors, which we are privileged to have. And Arvind Uppal is our board chair, and just learned so much from him. So I think having Advent as the owner has been extremely, enabling, and it's a powerful force multiplier for us.
Sure. Specifically on Eureka Forbes, I think one question that I discussed with you when I met you almost 2 years ago was the fact that Indians still haven't woken up to the fact that if you drink clean water, you drink water that's purer than what's coming out of your tap, you can end up avoiding significant diseases. It's just a healthier way to live. How and why is that not fully ingrained in the Indian people's mindset? And more importantly, what are companies like yourself doing to educate Indians about the fact that you need, not, I don't mean necessarily AquaGuard, but you need a water filter because the quality of the water from the tap isn't necessarily good.
No, I think, Gautam, you're right in the sense that people haven't felt strongly enough about water quality to necessarily break their inertia and enter the category. That said, while people may not be entirely familiar with the benefits of pure water, they are very, very intimately familiar with the downsides of drinking impure water, because it impacts the health immediately. It impacts, in many cases, their income, their productivity. And I think it's important for people like us, leaders, category creators, to keep fueling that dissonance and keep trying to drive awareness.
Sure.
If you look at the first 10, 15 years of Eureka Forbes, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
We drove a very functional message about the importance of pure water, and that helped the category grow. In the last 15, 20 years preceding the ownership change, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
We were consumed by our own internal battles or internal preoccupations. And when we did communicate, we were communicating more to defend market share than to really grow the category. Last year and a half ago, when we came on board 2 years ago, the question I remember you had posed me exactly like you said, and many people had, was that the question, and in many cases an instrumental question, that is this category one that is ready for growth, or is it that this category will remain small and niche? It hasn't grown for many years, and we needed to sort of answer that question and test that hypothesis. So we went out and did a lot of consumer insighting, consumer work.
Sure.
And the 2 or 3 barriers that emerged were, of course, the perceived high cost of ownership between the cost of the product and the cost of the recurring service cost. Number one. Number two, going back to your question, almost the perceived lack of relevance, that, I'm okay. I don't purify my water. I use a cloth filter or do something else.
Yeah.
I haven't died. I'm okay. So why do I need this? So we went out and did a relaunch of an affordable AquaGuard, the sub 7,000 rupees price point. Got the brand AquaGuard given to it, and most importantly, we mounted a very aggressive advertising campaign targeted at the cloth filter user. And there's a large segment of Indians who actually use cloth filters from the tap to purify the water. And the proof of purity in their minds is the impurities that stick on the cloth filter. But when you ask them and you engage them in a rational conversation, they acknowledge that while it's removing the physical impurity, it's doing nothing with the viruses and the bacteria, the ketanu, if you will.
Yeah, that's right.
And we mounted an advertising campaign talking about the fact that that cloth filter will lead to illnesses and make your child fall ill, miss examinations, etc., etc. And what we saw, Gautam, was we were hopeful, we were optimistic, as we normally tend to be, but we were ourselves surprised by the way the needle moved very quickly. I mean, it just moved like a switch on button. We saw volume growth surge in response to that campaign.
Yeah.
And all the follow-up work that we did showed that a large number of customers who had entered through that affordable device were all first-time category entrants. And we have seen that momentum continue. So I think the really, really interesting part is that, and that question has been answered conclusively, in my opinion, that this category, like any other consumer category, will grow provided marketeers address the barriers, understand consumer insights, and work towards them. So, and that growth continues now.
Understood. In fact, when I've seen people drink water from street vendors when they're eating a pav bhaji or they're eating some fast food or a dosa, literally on the street, and I ask them, "Aren't you concerned about the quality of the water?" And they say, "No, it's fine. It improves my immunity," and which is such a silly way of looking at it, because you don't know what you're consuming and how that's going to possibly impact any organ in your body. So very, very silly thinking, frankly. But the other thing, I guess, and again, this is when we met the first time. I discussed this with you, that while we have a population of 1.4, 1.5 billion people, okay, that's a great number to have, but the addressable TAM is really much smaller. And I don't mean specifically for water purifiers, but in general across products, whether it's shampoos, whether it's toothpaste, whether it's cars, two-wheelers. And it's a function of course, rising GDP and per capita income as a result, which will eventually take sales up. But the one company that's really mastered the art of exploding the TAM, and the TAM on day one itself being gigantic, is Reliance. And I'm a big fan of Reliance Industries. Geo, as you know, was launched, with a all-you-can-eat data plan at an extremely affordable value proposition, lowest ARPU on the planet, and voice calls completely free. So on day one, the addressable market was like 900 million people or more. And I'm not saying, Eureka Forbes should pursue that strategy and come out with like a 500 rupee water purifier. But my point really is, where can you bring this down to? You mentioned about your affordable product being 7,000 rupees, which, as we discussed, that it's not just 7,000 rupees, it's 7,000 rupees plus, the next 3 years of annual maintenance, which adds on. So the end bill to the consumer is that 7,000 plus adding up to maybe 10 or 12,000 rupees over a 3-year period. So do you think there's a value proposition for coming out with a mass market product, or is that 7,000 your mass market product?
No, Gautam, I'm a great fan of Reliance as well, and I think what they've done to grow and in many cases, magnify and explode categories where they've entered.
Yeah.
And I think there are learnings for us as well, from them, from many other categories. However, I think the important contextual point for our category is that right now we are at a 6% penetration. And the balance 94% of non-users are not just people who can't afford purifiers. There are a number of people in places like Mumbai or any large town metros who don't have a water purifier at home, and for reasons not linked to affordability and linked to the other reasons that I spoke about. So it's important for us to ensure that we go after that segment, and the unlock there is often not value or affordability, it's relevance. So making sure we have the right innovation, the right differentiation, the right product proposition. Illustrate with one example. We've just recently launched a product which gives instant hot water on tap. And with the growing habit of green tea, etc., hot water on tap is a very relevant proposition. And very interestingly, we are seeing a fair share of the new users in this product also being first-time category entrants. And this is a premium product. It's upwards of 25,000 rupees. So it is not a cheap proposition, but the fact that the barrier there wasn't affordability led to this unlock. So that's one part of it. That said, however, the larger part of your question remains valid, which is that there is a huge unlock required in the belly of the market. And is 7,000 rupees the right price point? I think 7,000 is a good starting point, but we'll have to keep doing more and work to lower that threshold. We also, by the way, have launched affordable AMC proposition starting at as low as 599. So you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money to stay in the product category, and you can do it for much lower cost of ownership. But given the size of price and the opportunity that we have, there are many ways of skinning this penetration cat. One is product, the other one is subscription and business model. So if we look at a very different business model, there is a vast headroom that we can tap into that way as well. But the broader point being that at 6% penetration, 12% in urban India, 20%, 25% in metros, there is abundant headroom for growing through value, through innovations, through just greater awareness, and maybe just more access and more distribution.
Understood. No, amazing. I think the fact is, for a country where our rivers are actually getting polluted, the oceans, of course, is a global problem with pollution, into the ocean. But that's obviously not potable water. I'm talking about drinking water. I think this is really the need of the hour, and the fact is that the addressable market is only going to get bigger and bigger, no question. Now, if we can shift focus to some of the other products, vacuum cleaners and some of the other products that you want to briefly talk about, and then we can ask you some questions on that too.
Sure, Gautam. I think on vacuum cleaners, there's a very interesting development stroke change that we are seeing. And of course, as you probably know, we entered the country long years ago with vacuum cleaners first before water purifiers. The categories remain small, as you know, and it's even much smaller than water purifiers. And of course, the reason for that is that there was always a question mark on its relevance. In a country where there's abundant domestic help, labor is cheap, then why do I really need to buy a vacuum cleaner? I think that the answer began to evolve and change for the last 4 or 5 years. The launch of more premium vacuum cleaners, which have more lifestyle statements, more high-tech products. And then, of course, with the pandemic, where we all realized that when you are locked up at home, you don't have access to domestic help. We need a plan B. We need a backup option for keeping our homes clean. And the backup option is one that I have to resort to and I have to use, and it better be convenient. So the entire segment of convenient cleaning began to grow significantly. Today, when you do consumer work and ask people about vacuum cleaners and the need for them, I think we don't hear consumers questioning the relevance anymore. And that's a very, very big and a very, very important inflection point that we have reached and we've crossed. And after a long time, we are seeing the vacuum cleaner category grow both in volume and in value because these are more premium products. On the back of the convenient cleaning segment, especially the handheld, the upright vacuum cleaners and the robotic ones. And we've actually done a fair amount of work in the last 1 year on getting an innovation portfolio and a pipeline that is across these segments. We've grown share. But of course, in some of these segments, we were well behind the market leader. So we have a catching up task to do. In some other segments, while we were trailing, we've caught up and we've taken leadership. For example, robotics. Robotics, we were late to sort of launch and to enter. 2 years back, we didn't have a robotics product. We got a portfolio going, and now we are market leaders. But this category is growing rapidly, and we've got a lot more work to do here. So vacuum cleaners, in many ways, actually is a very interesting change of what this category saw historically. And it's I think we expect it to continue as we go forward.
On air purifiers, I think that's the other need of the hour. I must tell you this, that about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I used to call up some of my friends in Delhi and say that winter's coming, so please shift to Mumbai for the next 4 months. And there's no pollution here. And lo and behold, we've gone on days when, the last 2 years, I've seen days when pollution levels, certain days, were higher in Mumbai than Delhi on that specific day. So I've gone from, ridiculing or, making fun of my friends. Sorry, I think someone's not on mute. But I guess I've gone from having no air purifiers to now having 4 in my home. So as a result, I would suspect that should be a growth category, but I'd like to hear from you.
No, Gautam, that's a really good point that you make. And you're absolutely right. For many years, it was believed that air purifiers or the need for air purifiers was a need which was confined geographically to the north, Delhi NCR, and at a certain period of time, which is possibly post-Diwali. All the data that we see now, AQI data, tells us that this is a universal problem. It's a nationwide problem. In some places like Mumbai, we saw this year that it grabbed headlines. But in most of the places, the quality is getting increasingly poorer. So this is a nationwide need, and it is a year-long need. If you look at AQI, other than maybe a few weeks, this time of the year, most of the cities for most times of the year have poor air quality. That said, this category needs patient category creation work to happen. And we're doing a fair amount of work to try and create this category to make sure that, we tap into the consumer insights, tap into the category barriers and grow this category. Now, if you think about some of the assets that we've got, we have a direct sales team. And of course, their SOPs, they go to consumers' homes, do demonstrations, handle objections, do consultative selling. Categories like robotics or categories like air purifiers are extremely amenable to in-home demonstrations because consumers can see almost immediately the efficacy of these products. So this category will grow for sure. It is growing even now off a small base, is growing very, very rapidly. But for us as a company, Gautam, we have to make sure we prioritize our resourcing. We've got, in many ways, if you will, a problem of plenty. That all our categories are growth categories with very, very large headroom for growth, low penetration levels, and we have a right to win in all of them. So how do we invest behind growing these categories? How do we sequence and roadmap our journey is something that we are thinking through. But air will be a big category, but it will take a longer time to ramp up.
Well, I think if I were to summarize what we've discussed so far, you clearly are a company. So Eureka Forbes is a company that's in the business of removing impurities in water, home, and air. So it's you're basically fighting impurities. So which is great. That could be a good tagline for you if you consider it, and do pay me some royalty.
Will do.
Okay, so let's open it up for Q&A. As I said at the outset, please either raise your hand or fill in your question in the chat box, and then we'll take some questions from Pratik. Okay, we have the first question that's come in. I understand that Eureka Forbes has a 28 to 30% share on AMC side on its installation base. How much market share do you expect to have on your incremental sale, considering all the initiatives that you're taking?
Got it. No, thank you, Sachin. Thank you for that question. And you're right. I think we have a very large service business, and the share that we have of the overall segment as an organized player is small, and we have a lot of headroom to grow. We have kicked off a number of activities and initiatives to grow our share of the service and aftermarket opportunity. We've launched affordable AMC options starting, like I said earlier, 599, which addressed one big barrier of affordability. I think the other interesting part about parallel service is that many consumers don't even know that they're availing of the parallel service. So awareness was a big need. We have mounted, therefore, an aggressive advertising campaign talking about the benefits of genuine service. We've launched filters with authentication capabilities with QR codes and so on, which weren't there earlier. So all of these are helping us grow our service business. Our service business is seeing volume growth after a long time, pretty much analogous to what we saw in product last year. And therefore, we expect that to continue as our efforts intensify. That's one. The other piece, and that's an interesting sort of change over what we used to do historically, is that in service, and I think as a question also sort of poses, we were going after the AMC opportunity. So when you were a new customer, and if your warranty ended, we would come to you for an AMC, or indeed if you're an AMC user, when your AMC ended, we would come back to you for AMC renewal.
Yeah.
But if you agreed, you stayed on the network. But if you did not agree, if you didn't sign up, then in 2 or 3 months, we would lose sight of you and lose track of you. And many months later, when you did need Eureka Forbes, when you did need to change the filters, we were in many ways missing in action. And that's one thing we have begun to change now. We've begun to build a set of capabilities that allow us to go after not just the AMC opportunity, but also the filters opportunity. Because the one thing is clear, our products need an aftermarket. There is an opportunity. The filters need to be changed. If not after 1 year, maybe after 18 months or 24 months, there will be a filter change movement. And we have to tap into that opportunity. So we have done the filter innovation that I spoke about earlier. We are building a strong filter go-to market because there's a very independent ecosystem which exists outside of a conventional network.
Yeah.
So we've done all that work. So we will see even service business grow. I don't see the mix changing too much, to be honest, in the future, because we also are dialing down and doubling down on the product growth. So we see growth in both places. Mix won't change materially.
The other question that's come in is how large a share of your overall business could the air purifier segment eventually account for? Do we have a sense of how penetration of air purifiers has grown in tandem with per capita GDP growth in other markets like Indonesia, Thailand, China, and how this potentially could play out in India? Because China had a similar problem, or still does. I mean, it hasn't completely gone away, but India as a country is investing, heavily into renewables, but it's all going to take time to play out. And I was the same conference that I was today at. One of the power companies said that our dependence on coal as a source of energy is still going to remain, pretty heavily for the next 10 years, if not longer. So, appreciate your thoughts on that.
Nicholas, the reality is that today air purifiers comprise a very small part of our business in low single digits. However, as I mentioned earlier, we see a tremendous opportunity. And when we, to your question, when we map the category growth in other peer markets, there is a very clear correlation between per capita GDP and the category growth. And on account of growing urbanization, growing industrialization, more people on the roads, more automobiles, more construction activity. So all of those factors clearly correlate with air purifier category growth. And we see the same thing, and the point Gautam was making earlier, we see the same playing out in India. In many markets across the country, many urban centers, there is a vast amount of construction happening and an infrastructure push that's happening. And that's leading to a severe stress on air quality. And that's what's in turn fueling the need for pure air. So we certainly see this correlated. And our own growth numbers show that there is a tremendous potential for this segment. But like I was saying earlier, for us, we have to make sure we roadmap this and sequence the way we invest behind air.
So the next question is, what are the new product segments that you're looking at? And as we look ahead for the next 3 to 5 years, how much growth do you anticipate, I guess, from the new product segments? How much will be coming from the new product segments versus the existing product suite?
So Sanjay, the reality is that our existing categories are themselves being almost reinvented. I talked about vacuum cleaners and how that is going from the old corded canister-based vacuum cleaners to a lot more cordless, a lot more robotic-driven vacuum cleaners. Similarly, in water and water purifiers, we are seeing growth at both ends of the continuum. We are seeing the growth at the economy end of the category. We are seeing growth at the premium end. And therefore, we are seeing a lot of work happening, innovation in both these categories. In air, I've spoken about earlier.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of work happening in our own existing categories. Within them, there are 2 areas where I see us doing maybe much more work. In water, it's at the premium end. Whereas I mentioned earlier, we hadn't been terribly innovative in the last year and a half. Not only have we caught up with and plugged the portfolio gaps, but we are now setting the pace on innovation with a number of our products on 2 or 3 vectors. One is design, because kitchens have upgraded. Very often, water purifiers haven't. So really putting the focus on aesthetics and on design quality is one vector. The other one is on functionality. A case in point being instant hot water. Third point being the sink water purifier. So that's one big area of work for us. In robotics, clearly the one area where we are dialing up our play is in robotics. And this segment is growing rapidly. We have a certain portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, we are market leaders, but we can do a lot more. And therefore, you will see us do a fair amount of work also in robotics. That said, we're a company, we know our mandate is one of growth. We obsess about growth. And we also remain open to the possibilities of exploring and going after adjacencies or other segments. Sure. But for the moment, our current categories provide abundant headroom for growth and for innovation.
So the next question here is, have there been any takeaways from newer entrants like Urban Company, which we are incorporating? I didn't realize, is that a Eureka Forbes company, Urban Company?
No, it's the Urban Company, is the service company. They have launched last year water purifiers and largely on Amazon and Flipkart. Yeah. And that's I think that's the context. Look, I think if I look not just the Urban Company, but if I look at the broader point behind the question, I think this category, and we spoke about earlier, hadn't seen a lot of growth, and because the category hadn't grown much, there wasn't a lot of interest from other players, and didn't see a lot of competition, a lot of marketing activity. I think that's begun to change. Example that you quoted being a case in point. But we are seeing a lot more players come in, a lot more innovation happen. And I think that's great news for this category. Because the problem in this category has not been competitive headwinds, it's been the complete absence of any innovation, any activity, any excitement.
Yeah.
And I think as more competition enters, as there is more excitement, there is more innovation, there is more visibility, it will create more and more stimuli for consumers or for non-users to reevaluate and to enter the category.
Sure.
So I think competition is good. And from the question that you asked specifically on urban company, etc., I think it just reinforces the belief that we have to be, our strength is the fact that we are omni-channel. We are strong on Amazon and Flipkart. We are market leaders, and we've grown share. But the fact that we have a portfolio of channels, so to speak, between direct sales, retail, both traditional trade and modern trade, that allows us to sell the portfolio of products and categories much, much better. And I think that's the strength for us.
So the follow-up to the question to that from the same person is, how overhyped do you think is quick commerce, and can a vacuum cleaner or a water purifier be sold through quick commerce? I mean, I just, when you including the guy I met today, at the conference, they make it look like they're going to be selling electronic products. I mean, you can sell batteries. I get that, but I think a water purifier or a vacuum cleaner, I'll be surprised if somebody wants it in 20 minutes delivered to their home, without actually testing the product.
So no, that's a fair question. But I think the reality is that, is there a compelling consumer need?
Yeah.
Maybe not. But really, I mean, I don't need my detergent to come in right now in 10 minutes, but I do ask for it to come right now. So I think if I separate the need from now the desire that, let me, if it's available to me quickly, I might as well get it. People are getting more and more impatient. Our lifestyles are such that we want it here and now, almost instant gratification. That's the new age consumer. Yeah. So I believe that there will be a role for quick commerce for products like water, maybe much more vacuum cleaners and robotic ones, because which are easy to, don't require installation. You just get them, you configure the app, and it's easy to get them up and going. And maybe filters. So yes, to some extent there is a role for quick commerce, but I don't see it becoming very large and very mainstream. And maybe these are famous last words, Gautam, to your earlier point. but there's a role for quick commerce for sure, on a serious note.
I like the next question that's been posted. I'm reading it aloud. Thoughts on how exciting a subscription model could be for water purifiers, because it does solve for the capturing the post sales service market as well.
No, absolutely, Toshal. I think subscription and rental will have a role to play, given our low penetration levels and given these affordability barrier. I think there is a market for making this a pay-as-you-go model. One is affordability. The other is very often consumers don't want the commitment of installing a water purifier, because very often they live in rented accommodation. Yeah. They don't want to have the work done, or they don't want, quote unquote, the hassles of servicing the device, changing the filter. They just want it to be taken care of. Yeah. So certainly there's the market. And we have a small pilot going on in Chennai right now. We've had it for some time now. We have the learnings from that. And we will be ready to scale this up when we decide. Now, the good part, Gautam, and here for Eureka Forbes, is that we have all the enabling capabilities required to have a big play in rental and subscription. We have a very strong brand. We have a right portfolio of products spanning from entry level to premium. We have a very strong digital front end. We have a very large service network. And of course, we have capabilities of logistics across the country. So I think we feel good about where we are between our capabilities and our learnings from the pilot. And we will scale this up when we believe the time is right. Right now, the reality is that we are growing in high teens in water, and sometimes even faster. So we see a lot of growth in the device and the outright sale opportunity itself. Yeah. But we will scale up subscription when the time is right.
The other one that's coming is the RO versus UV water purifiers, which is growing faster. And it says, I understand UV filters are good enough for tap water purification. Which one of these are you going to prioritize?
I think it's an interesting question. And you're right, in many markets like Mumbai, the municipal water that we get, I think comes with acceptable levels of TDS. And therefore a UV device very often works well. And that's true also markets like Bangalore and Gurgaon and Delhi. However, the reality is that there are outlier events when the water quality changes dramatically. When there's a water shortage, you're forced to get water from tankers, for example. So while on an average your graph is like this, there'll be spikes when your TDS really surges and shoots up. And that creates a problem for a UV water purifier. So coming back to your question, the RO devices, the segment is growing faster than UV because people are solving for these outlier events. Because you can never be sure, unfortunately, that you will get the same water supply and the input water quality consistently. Correct. So that's what's driving the growth of ROs.
Okay. And the next question is there an opportunity to expand your market reach by having water purifiers specifically catering to the institutional or a B2B segment? And is that a low-hanging fruit effectively for you?
So we do have a B2B business going. It's small right now, but it's a business that we intend to invest behind. And exactly to the point that you made, that the B2B, the institutional segment is growing. And it's a category where there is a segment where there's a large need. The current behavior in this segment very often is more of buying bottled water in drums. There's not as much of, but that needs to change, and that requires again some category creation work. So we've got a portfolio of products, but we are doing more work there, and you will see us stepping this up over time.
A question's come in that's also pretty interesting. There was a lot of emphasis on the revamped Eureka Forbes app. And how is that helping, increase market share in the after sales as well?
Yeah, so this is something that we've done very consciously, Gautam. And we've talked about our vision and wanting to be a D2C player, so that it would allow us to overcome the friction, if any, in the intermediary network and talk to consumers directly. So we built a digital team. We put a new app out. Our old app, which such as it was, had a rating of 1.8. The new app is rating of 4.2 to 4.3. We have seen a significant increase in our monthly active users, in our app installs. More than 80% of our engagement now, they happen digitally. More than half of our service revenue now comes digitally. And this is all in the space of the last 1 year. So we have seen a significant dial-up in our D2C play. What we've also launched recently, about a month ago, is our product commerce functionality. And as you can imagine, we've got a fair amount of organic traffic which comes for people wanting to explore our products. We also have SEM driving traffic to our sites, and that we are using now to drive product sales as well. So then that's just got off. The early results are encouraging, but we'll have to do a lot more. But we feel good about where we are in our digital journey.
I'm going to take one more question because we're running out of time. It's past 7, and I don't want to keep you longer in the office. But question really is, why do you think HUL got out of the business of water purification when it's such a fast-growing segment? It's a need of the hour. India needs cleaner water. And then you have new entrants like Urban Company, for example. I know. I mean, I'm not just because you worked at Unilever, but I'm trying to figure out what do you think could be their reason. Plus, I believe it was a pretty cheap valuation at which they exited.
I think, look, it wouldn't be. I mean, I wouldn't speak on behalf of Unilever, but if I can hazard a guess from the outside, based on whatever data is publicly available, I think this was not linked to the potential of the category as much as it was linked to their own strategy of shedding their non-core businesses. And clearly, given Unilever's portfolio of businesses, this was seen to be not core, and therefore they decided to divest it. You're hearing about also ice cream business being also reevaluated globally. So I think this is part of the new CEO strategy to double down on the core portfolio. And I think it was possibly linked more to that.
Must be that. Great. So on behalf of all of us at Nepean Capital and all of our audience, I'd like to thank you once again for taking the time, spending over an hour to explain to us your strategy. I think you have a great product, a great company, and of course, a great team. And we look forward to more earning surprises going forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everyone's interest. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening, please. Thank you.